She didn't come to save her sister. She came to expose her. Jennifer Lopez's estranged sibling walked into court beside Ben Affleck, and the documents she carried left no room for doubt. Inside those pages was a story of lies, manipulation, and a criminal empire hiding behind a global superstar's smile. The courtroom was already buzzing with whispers when Ben Affleck took the stand, but the tension hit a breaking point when the doors opened again, and in walked a woman no one expected. Maria Lopez, Jennifer's older sister, unseen in public for over 20 years. Dressed in black, her eyes locked with her sister's across the courtroom. There was no warmth, no nod of recognition, just fire. Ben didn't react. He'd met Maria days earlier, in a quiet back room at the U.S. Attorney's office where they had cross-verified their findings, and now here she was, walking into a federal court not to shield a sister, but to destroy the illusion that had protected her for decades. Jennifer's attorneys froze. She didn't. Her face, always poised and measured, briefly cracked. She mouthed something. No one could hear it, but the cameras caught it. No, not her. The judge leaned forward. Ms. Lopez, are you prepared to testify? Yes, Your Honor, Maria said calmly. I've brought records, from before the fame, from before she became untouchable. The court clerk retrieved a weathered blue file folder, marked with an old-school logo and dated 1994. Inside, letters, personal notebooks, and early business correspondence, handwritten by Jennifer, some of which directly contradicted statements she had made under oath. But it was more than nostalgia. The prosecution had reviewed the material the night before. What Maria had uncovered, hidden away in their late father's attic, included financial ledgers from Jennifer's first music tours, receipts from anonymous consultants, and a paper trail leading back to offshore accounts long before she claimed she had access to that kind of money. Then Maria pulled out something else, a cassette tape, not digital, not edited, a simple analog voice recording. On it, Jennifer coaching Maria on how to lie during an early business audit. I didn't understand it then, Maria told the court, but I kept the tape. I knew someday I might need it. Jennifer sat frozen. Her legal team objected, citing hearsay, but the judge allowed it, citing chain of custody evidence and voice recognition confirmation already submitted. The courtroom went silent as the tape played. It wasn't just what Jennifer said, it was how she said it. Cold, calculated, as if manipulation came as naturally as breathing. Then came Ben's second round of testimony. When Maria reached out to me, he began, I realized everything I suspected was real. She'd been running this long before Hollywood ever called. He turned toward Jennifer. This isn't revenge. This is accountability. The camera panned to Jennifer. Her eyes didn't move. Her world, meticulously constructed over 3 decades, was starting to fracture. And this was just the beginning. The courtroom reconvened the next morning, buzzing louder than before. Media trucks jammed the street outside the Manhattan Federal Building. Overnight, Maria Lopez had become a trending topic. Not as the forgotten sister of a global icon, but as the woman who dared to speak. Inside, the prosecution wasted no time. They began by presenting authenticated scans of several handwritten letters, each one signed Jen, and addressed to Maria between 1994 and 1998. In these letters, Jennifer described alternative accounting tricks, cash-heavy rehearsals, and one particular note that would set the courtroom ablaze. It's not illegal if no one looks too hard. The studio is blind, and if you're smart, so are you. The letters were written before her first record deal was signed, proof that her methods had long predated the glamour. Jennifer's attorneys attempted to paint Maria as a jealous sibling trying to destroy her sister's legacy. She lived in your shadow, one of them said during cross-examination. She's bitter. You cut her off. Now she's here to settle the score. But Maria didn't flinch. She didn't cut me off, she said. She erased me, and I let her, until I realized how many people she'd stepped on to rise. Then came the bank statements. Ben Affleck, still seated on the witness bench, confirmed he had matched at least 5 of the suspicious transactions mentioned in Jennifer's old letters to current shell companies in Luxembourg and the Cayman Islands. The company names changed, Ben explained, but the account routing stayed eerily familiar. On a large display, prosecutors pulled up side-by-side images, a 1997 ledger with a payment to Orion Arts, and a 2023 statement showing a payment from Nova Motion Inc., routed through the same clearing bank in Zurich. But the most devastating moment of the day came when Maria handed over a sealed envelope dated 2005 with Jennifer's old signature in wax. Inside was a signed affidavit. It was written by their late father. The document stated that he had refused to co-sign on one of Jennifer's early business ventures because he, quote, believed the people around her were not above board. He warned Maria to be careful, and specifically referenced cash drops, favor contracts, and a man named only as TB. At this, Jennifer visibly shifted in her seat. For the first time since proceedings began, she whispered something to her attorney and shook her head slowly. Cameras caught her lips. They weren't supposed to keep that. The judge called for a recess. In the hallway, reporters swarmed Maria. She declined to speak. Ben did too, but their silence wasn't emptiness. It was control. They had only just begun. By the third day, the trial had become a media circus. Satellite vans from CNN to Telemundo lined the block. Protesters and superfans clashed outside the courthouse. Signs ranged from "Justice for the Truth" to "Free J-Lo, this is a witch hunt." But inside the courtroom, the tone had shifted. It was no longer just about the accusations. It was about how deep they went and how many lives had been quietly destroyed along the way. The prosecution's next witness was a shock to everyone, even Jennifer's attorneys, Ava Martinez, a former accountant for J-Lo Beauty. Quiet, soft-spoken, and visibly nervous, Ava approached the stand clutching a flash drive. "Jennifer told me to make it look like a marketing expense," she said, voice trembling. "But it was cash, nearly $200,000 in cash, handed off to a private driver in Rio de Janeiro." Jennifer's legal team objected, but the judge waved them off. "The witness has first-hand knowledge. Proceed." Ava continued. "I asked her about the accounting. She smiled and said, 'That's why I pay you, to make it disappear.'" As her words echoed through the courtroom, Jennifer finally reacted. Her head turned sharply toward Ava, her jaw clenched. For a moment she looked less like the polished global superstar and more like someone cornered, calculating, alert, dangerous. But it was Ben's next move that shattered the tension and her composure. He requested to submit a private home video as evidence. The footage, taken in 2022, showed Jennifer hosting a small party at their Los Angeles estate. Guests laughed and drank champagne. Music played. Nothing seemed out of place until a voice in the background, later verified to be Jennifer's, said, "These people would kill to be me, and if they get too close, I kill the dream before they can touch it." Gasps rippled through the room. Jennifer's lawyer jumped to object, claiming context manipulation, but it was too late. The judge allowed it, and then came Maria's second testimony. She described growing up with Jennifer, how the ambition started early, how small lies turned into bigger ones, how their father tried to rein her in. "She learned to lie before she learned to drive," Maria said coldly, "and she learned that power meant never having to say sorry." Jennifer stood up suddenly, slamming her hand on the defense table. "That's enough," she shouted. The room froze. Cameras snapped. The judge banged the gavel. Jennifer's face turned pale. Realizing her outburst had just confirmed more than any witness could, her mask had finally cracked, and now everyone could see what was behind it. As court resumed after the explosive outburst, Jennifer Lopez sat back down. Her legal team flanked her protectively, but the damage was done. The jury had seen the mask slip. The world had seen the superstar lose control. That morning, federal prosecutors introduced a new line of evidence: emails recovered from one of Jennifer's former assistants. Not just any emails, these were encrypted messages, decrypted by FBI techs, and confirmed to have come from Jennifer's personal domain. The subject line of one caught immediate attention: schedule cleanup before the Caymans trip. In the body, instructions to her tour manager and legal advisor to remove physical files, sanitize laptops, and limit staff access to Studio 3B. The emails weren't just suspicious, they were damning. And then came the big blow. A calendar screenshot, synced to her private assistant's phone, showed a meeting with a shell company executive, one Tomas B., a name that had surfaced earlier in her father's sealed affidavit. He wasn't a business consultant, Maria Lopez testified during redirect. He was our uncle's former cellmate. Jennifer once said, "He taught me more about finance than NYU ever could." The jury shifted uncomfortably. Jennifer tried to maintain composure, but her eyes flicked nervously toward the door, as if wondering if more ghosts from her past might walk through it. Then Ben took the stand one final time. He asked for permission to read a letter Jennifer once wrote to him back when they were married. The court permitted it under personal corroboration laws. "B, if anything ever happens to me, check the vault. You'll know what to do. Keep them scared. Never let them speak unless you own what they'll say. That's how power works." Ben folded the letter in silence. Then he turned to the jury. "I didn't understand this when I first read it. I thought it was just paranoia. Now I know it was a playbook." That's when Jennifer cracked again, not with anger, but with tears. Tears that confused the room. Was it regret? Was it fear? Or was it fury that even her closest circle had turned against her? The judge paused the trial early for the day, but before adjourning he looked at Jennifer and said, "Ms. Lopez, tomorrow the prosecution will begin its closing arguments. You will have an opportunity to respond under oath. Choose your words carefully. They may be your last as a free woman." As Jennifer exited the courtroom, cameras caught her whispering to her lawyer, "I never thought he'd actually do it. Not him. Not Ben." But he had. And tomorrow, she'd have to answer for it. Not as a star, not as a victim, but as the accused. The final day of the trial dawned gray and silent, almost funereal. The plaza outside the courthouse was still. No chanting fans, no screaming press, just tension, heavy and invisible, like the moment before a storm breaks. Inside, all eyes were on Jennifer Lopez. She had chosen to testify. Dressed in a muted navy suit, her hair pulled back tightly, she looked more like a defendant than the icon millions had adored. The courtroom buzzed as she walked to the stand, every eye on her, every camera live. She took the oath, and then she began. "I'm not perfect," she said softly, "but I'm not what they've painted me to be either." Her voice was steady, almost too steady, like she'd rehearsed the words for years. She denied the criminal conspiracy, brushed off the encrypted emails as taken out of context, and claimed the handwritten letters were fabricated family gossip. When asked directly about Maria, her voice grew cold. "We were never close. She resented my success. This is her revenge tour." And Ben? She barely acknowledged him. Only once she turned in his direction and said, "You said you loved me, but you brought this circus to my door." Ben didn't flinch. Maria didn't blink. Then came the prosecution's closing argument. It was sharp, surgical, unforgiving. This trial, the lead prosecutor said, was not about fame. It was about fraud, manipulation, and control. Ms. Lopez built an empire, not just of music, but of fear. And when the people closest to her refused to lie anymore, that empire began to crumble. They ended with the cassette tape, the recording of Jennifer instructing Maria how to lie. As it played one final time, the courtroom held its breath. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Jennifer never looked up. When the foreman returned, silence fell like a guillotine. On all counts, we find the defendant, Jennifer Lopez, guilty. Gasps. A muffled cry from someone in the back. The judge nodded grimly and announced sentencing would follow in 60 days. Jennifer's expression didn't change. No tears this time. No anger, just blankness. As marshals approached, she turned once more toward Ben and said almost inaudibly, "They'll forget. The world always forgets." But Ben shook his head. Not this time. Not with the truth on tape. Handcuffs clicked, cameras flashed, and just like that, the myth of Jennifer Lopez, the untouchable star, the carefully crafted image, was gone. All that remained was a file number, a conviction, and two people, Ben and Maria, who finally chose the truth over silence. Outside the courthouse, a reporter summarized it best. Hollywood didn't just lose a star today, it lost a lie.